How you doing, Laura?
Pretty good, Larry.
Good.
Is Emma recovering from her weekend?
Well, I think so. It's hard to tell because she likes to sleep anytime, whether she's had a busy weekend or not. She's my one that would sleep until 2 o'clock in the afternoon if I let her.
She's a busy kid.
Yeah.
When do you leave to go see Matt? Next Wednesday.
So this would be, so Larry, this would be the rest of this year, next year, right?
I think you have 2 years left, yeah.
Year and a half.
Yeah. Year and a half.
20, the end of 20.
This is Jennifer Freeberg.
Hello?
Jennifer, you didn't have to run here yourself comfortable?
We have that chair wired.
Or the sound, or?
Don't mind him.
Hi.
Let me, just open the meeting, this is an open meeting, so let me just open it and then we'll get started. So I'll open the special board meeting of the Plymouth Community School Board of Trustees. Our purpose or agenda this evening is for interviewing candidates for an open board seat. That's our agenda. So welcome to our meeting. We will go through, just ask questions. We're a pretty informal group, although it's certainly an important position we recognize. But let me just start out by indicating thank you for your interest and for coming in and speaking with us this evening. We do have a legal and statutory process to go through, just as is customary for a lot of things we do here. So we are following that, and we have interviews this evening. We have interviews on the 6th. And then we'll be making a recommendation and a decision at a meeting on May 15th. So that's our timeline. And prior to this evening, we certainly appreciate you submitting your letter of interest, helpful. And then this evening, we're just going to ask some questions to get to know you a little bit better and what how you see serving on the board and what in the world got you to come in here and decide to try to do that. So with that, I'll just begin, even though we have some background, if you wouldn't mind just kind of expanding on that or telling us about yourself, experiences, really what led to your interest in filling the vacant seat that we have on the board.
My name is Jennifer Freeberg. I've lived in the Marshall County area since 6th grade, so Culver until I got married. Actually, I moved out from college when I went to college. And it took us a long time to have children, but I've always loved children. And when I finally had my own, I lived in the Milledgeville school district and wanted to be on the school board. Didn't realize I couldn't be until I inquired years ago. And so when we moved into Plymouth, I decided that I could do it now. And that was when the seat was open in November. And so went through the election process, which was kind of interesting. My main thing is to be part of a team that makes the decisions for the kids, their education, their, college, going to college, getting them ready for the future, whether it be college or technical, or I just want to be part of that decision-making process. I worked in the community as a nurse practitioner. Actually, I worked for the hospital for 32 years between South Bend and Plymouth. And I've worked as a nurse practitioner for the last 12 years, and 6 years of that was in pediatrics. So, and the other was in family practice. So I've taken, and a lot of my pediatric population followed me into family practice. So I have a vested interest in children in this community because I know many of of them from birth until, and now I'm seeing a lot of the kids that are having their own kids. So I really want to be a part of just continuing almost a holistic, like, care of them, that I can be a part of the process of making sure that, community is doing the things that are great for education and their well-being. Questions?
Jennifer, you're familiar with Plymouth schools because you've had
Yes.
kids graduate and you have kids in school now. What do you perceive to be some of the strengths of the Plymouth school system? And then on the flip side of that, are there any areas that you perceive that we need to address or work to improve?
I think one of the major strengths, and one of the reasons why I want to bring my kids here, is the diversity with the education and sports. There's so many things to offer. The other thing that we really were interested in was the project-based learning, which was a new style of learning that I thought my kids would do well in, and they've been in that since third grade. The other strength is I've been in 3 different, Menominee, Washington, Riverside. Okay, so I've been in all the schools except for 2 elementary schools. I've been in those. So the leadership cares. I mean, we've had several reasons to speak with principals. I've been on the PTO in both the elementary schools, and I volunteered weekly in the classroom. And once the kids didn't want to be there anymore, just volunteered to grade papers and things like that. But every time that I spoke to a principal or I spoke to someone in the leadership, teachers in the leadership position, they always cared about the well-being of my kids, whether or not something was working well for them or not working well for them. The other improvement.
Flip side, yeah.
Improvement. The only thing I can really think of is, and this is just from my experience, would be communication. It's getting better as the kids have been in, but my daughter's in sports, my son used to be. There's some teachers that communicate very well, there's some coaches that communicate very well. If they don't, it's difficult to find the information. So I've gone to the website, I've tried to find the information that I needed, and sometimes the website's a little difficult to navigate to try to find what you're looking for. So communication would be my website.
Okay, good, thank you.
And what are some of the hopes that you have for Plymouth schools moving into the future?
My hopes are that they continue to go with the flow of the increased technology. Technology is constantly changing, and if we sit and don't move with it, then we're going to become stagnant. So I would like to see maybe, I know there's continuing education for the teachers, but the more continuing education for them to help them to better the students. We have a multicultural students. There's a lot of education that goes along with being able to take care of each different child. I think background, education level, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
What do you view as attributes of a good board member as it relates to serving on the potential for serving on the school board? And then further, what strengths would you bring to the board?
Attributes would be someone that works well as a team. Someone who isn't in it for their own gain. Someone that can communicate well with others and think. That's a terrible thing to say, but as far as attributes that I would have to bring to the school board would be my healthcare knowledge. I know there's policies and things that are written with healthcare in mind, and so I have that knowledge that I don't think anybody on the school board has it. So I have expertise in the healthcare field.
you don't give out prescriptions or anything more.
No.
Cheese.
Yes, in the office.
Sometimes as a board member, whether it's at home or wherever we might be, people will call or raise questions with us individually outside of a public setting, et cetera. Receiving those types of calls may be a difficult question to ask because of not knowing the nature of the call, but just in general, how would you handle those types of situations if a parent or patron of the corporation reached out to you directly?
Well, if they were talking to me, I would have to listen. And then I would make sure that they understood that I would have to take the information to the board and follow whatever the rules are. I don't know what the rules of the board are at this point yet, but follow what the rules are to get the information to the board, because I can't make a decision for them. I cannot tell them that it's going to be answered a certain way. I have to make sure that, it's placed in front of everybody so that we can discuss it.
Jennifer, we've been asking you different questions. What questions do you have of us? Anything we can clarify or answer?
That's probably the hardest question. Because without really, I've only been to a few school board meetings, so I'm not familiar with everything, and so nothing comes to mind at this point.
Okay.
I can think of.
Just want to make sure I didn't think I had any questions from your letter of interest, but I just want to make sure. I know we have questions that we certainly wanted to make sure we ask, based on the responses that Jennifer has provided. Did that generate any other questions or anything? I don't want to make this, these are the only ones that we agreed we wanted to make sure to cover. What other questions, if any, do we want to ask of Jennifer? I'm going to go off the script. A lot of yard signs out and about in our community right now regarding referendum. We've got a school under construction. We've got a lot of things going on. Any reaction or insight into those things that we're trying to accomplish?
I actually told Andy where did I see you? At the gas station. I told him that his pilot news, what's it called? Interview. Thank you. Was very helpful, because my husband and I had a conversation the night before that we had, we'd seen signs, we knew that something was going on, we weren't sure what it was, and so that article in the paper was extremely helpful to say where is the money going, what's going on. I'm for it. I mean, when people just hear you're going to raise taxes, but yet you don't know what they're going for, it's difficult to say, yeah, take my money. But I'm all for it.
Somewhat related to that, and I appreciate your comments about healthcare background, et cetera, because everybody on our board and over the years has brought different expertise, whether from their own personal. So this again may not be an overly fair question given your background, but what general knowledge, or even if you don't have the knowledge, what would be your approach on learning things about school, the financial piece of it, budgeting piece of it, either individually or collectively, or maybe you have some of that knowledge already about school funding. That's something that we deal with quite a bit.
Let's say the only knowledge I have is Amy did a class when I was running for school board.
Right.
So I have that. Jen did to review it, but I'm assuming that I'll learn it along the way too.
Sure. We have opportunities to, as, you know, there's association that we belong to that does training and those types of things. I'm assuming your schedule will allow for those types of activities.
I actually am not in the office any longer, and I work in the nursing homes. So it has freed me up extremely. I mean, I pretty much have control of my own schedule at this point. And I
Doing
go
better
to,
than I am.
yeah. And I go to continuing education things for my work also. So I go into, you know, a seminar or whatever would be not a big deal for me.
Those are just some of the things that more to follow up on. Well, again, we are conducting interviews this evening on the 6th, making a decision on the 15th. If you're anything like me, you may leave and say, oh, I do have a question. I mean, feel free to follow up with Andy, and if it's something that that you have for us, or reach out to us, we can certainly address those as well. But unless anybody else has any questions for Jennifer this evening.
I do have one
Yeah.
question. The 15th I thought was a Wednesday.
It
It
is.
is
Okay. I thought school board meetings were on Tuesdays.
normally, we've had to reschedule a couple this year
Okay.
just because of schedules of our members.
Okay.
Well, on that one, isn't it, we gotta put in the notice for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, there's some time frames associated
Yeah.
between, so that's part of that statutory process that I was referring to.
I was just confused.
And then,
Meetings are on a Tuesday and then
Typically,
Yeah.
the first Tuesday of every month.
Normally they are.
Mhm. And it's all year round.
so sometimes we have to make sure we try to get all board members at meetings, and sometimes just have to be flexible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm sure you can-
Sure. Michael Ferry, seat for you there, and welcome.
Good evening. Michael, Mike?
Either one is fine.
Yeah, that would help.
Most people call me Mike.
That's great. Well, thank you for coming in. The process that we are going through, you understand the situation. We have an open seat. So the statute lays out what we need to do in order to fill that. So we're going through that. And at this stage, interviewing folks that have submitted a letter of interest. And so we're conducting those this evening as well. On time, as well as on May 6th. And then based on the results of that process, we will in our meetings off a little bit this month because of the process that we're going through, but at our board meeting on May 15th, we'll be making a recommendation for a decision. So generally that's the process, pretty straightforward. So this evening, we've got some questions that we would like to go through, and we're pretty informal, pretty relaxed, to get your input and feedback and kind of get to know you a little bit more and what has brought you here to be interested in joining this group. But before we do that, and if I forget to do it at the end, thank you, regardless of our decision, thank you for stepping up and being interested in it's my own personal bias, I guess. This is a very important contribution to our community to be part of this process. So thank you for your interest. So I'll start off. We got your letter. Appreciate that. Have a pretty good idea of your background, experiences, et cetera, but we'll let you put them in your own words, expand where you want to, et cetera. And really based on that or not based on that, what has led you to have interest in serving on the school board for Plymouth?
I've actually been a part in some way with the school system for nearly 20 years now with the music department. So I'm currently the vice president of the Music Boosters. I've held that position for 3 years. I did put in my resignation, which is effective next month, but I'm still going to continue to help them. It's just been something that I enjoy. Not to mention I have one child of my own that went to school here, and I've got 4 stepchildren that either have graduated or go to school here currently. They're in the arts and athletics. So I've been a part in that way too, of going to many athletic events and many choirs and marching band festivals. And I've actually been the chairman 2 years for the Harvest Festival that we host here, and an assistant chairman 1 year. So I've been involved with the school for quite some time. And then, in addition to that, I know quite a few of the people that are here just because of where I went to school from. So Mr. Condon was my principal too.
So you went to Knox.
I did go to Knox. Yeah. Yeah. So it's something that I've always been a part of. I love this school. I love this community. I like what the board is doing. I wouldn't be one of them to come in and want to change everything up. I like the direction that the school system has been going in. I just want to be a part of that and continue it.
From that point, in your experience and exposure to the school system, what do you perceive to be the strengths of the Plymouth Community Schools? And on the flip side, have you observed or see anything that we need to be taking a look at in order to improve?
Well, one of the things that, I ran the last election against you.
All right, guys.
And one of the things during the radio interview that I had done that I said I think Plymouth could expand on was offering more classes in tech type areas. So expanding like into the automotive, expanding, and I know we have some of this currently going on now, but I'm talking of expansions and everything to allow more students to be able to take part of that. Nursing is another big one, so the healthcare field, but that's probably one thing I would say that it could use some differences on. What the school has done well in, I believe, if you look at our scores that we have, could they be better? Almost every school is going to tell you they could be better. But comparative to some of the other schools that I've seen, I think the Plymouth School District is doing pretty well when it comes to our scores. So that would be our positive and negative.
Okay, then what are some of the hopes that you have for Plymouth schools moving into the future?
Well, there's lots of exciting things that are happening now with Lincoln Jr. Getting a new school and a little bit, and I'm going to be honest, I really don't know too much about this referendum that's going on now. But I understand the purpose of it and I understand the need for it. So there's just exciting things that are happening in this school district that kind of makes you intrigued.
What do you feel are good attributes of a school board member, and then what attributes would you bring to the board?
Well, I think it would require someone who can work well with others, because you are a team, and someone who maybe has a lower level of, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. So someone who is not a hothead. So someone who can be level-headed and work with other people. I really think that's probably going to be the biggest thing that is going to need to take place with this board member, is that they're going to have the ability and the need to work well with others.
And your particular attribute?
I'm good at that. With my current job, I'm a current quality manager with a Fortune 500 company, and I have employees under me. throughout the whole state. So I do a lot of traveling, but I have the ability to maneuver my schedule because I am salaried. So I have to have that level-headedness and be able to work well with others, especially when I have several different clients that I have to work with. And one of them being the state of Indiana is one of our clients.
Sometimes being a board member, whether it's out in the public or just sitting at home at evening and the phone rings, you may get a concerned parent or patron reaching out to you directly. And in those situations, how do you see yourself handling those, or what process would you go through to react to those types of calls or inquiries?
Well, before I took the position that I've had now for 13 years, I transferred from the prison system, so I worked in the Department of Corrections. So one of the things that I always had to deal with was hostility. So there could be angry people. It's how you treat that person. And I think it's all about trying to calm them down a little bit. And not saying things like, ma'am, or will you calm down? You've got to be able to, it's how you word things, it's how you treat people. I'm a big person on, if you give respect, you're going to get respect back. And that worked for me pretty well when I was in the prison system. I did that for 6 years before transfer. I transferred from Department of Corrections to Division of Family Resources, and then when they privatized, and I'm with that company now, I've been with them ever since then, starting in 2005, I think it was, 6.
Sounds challenging.
It can be. It has its moments. Not so much now. Department of Corrections, I would say, was probably a lot more challenging than what my current position is.
Mike, we've been asking you several questions. What questions do you have of us?
I don't really have any questions, but I do have a statement. I find it intriguing that 9 people, including myself, have went for this position, but yet none of them, except the one that I've just seen, has taken the time to actually go for the position as an elected official. Right? But when it's easy and they can turn in a piece of paper that says, I want to be on the school board, then you have everybody come in. I really would like to see the school board choose someone who has put the time, the effort, the money involved to be on the school board. This is the second time that I've done this. This isn't the first time. The last time that there was an opening, I requested it. Didn't get it, but I requested it. There were 4 of us at that time. And now there's 9. But only 3 of us, including the incumbent, was running the last election. And even prior to that, there hasn't been too many fights as far as the elections for the school board positions. So I just hate to see that when it's easy, someone wants to try to come in and upheld the seat, but they didn't take the time and the effort, the money that it takes to actually apply to be an elected official.
Of course, on the flip side of that, whoever is selected in a year and a half, they will have to run.
They will.
So
They will.
your point's well taken.
I've wanted this for quite some time, and I actually can't remember when it was that I had put the request in the last time that there was an open seat, but it's probably been at least a couple years. I don't know if any of you remember when that was.
It was one I
Is it yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jenny Sickmore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so.
Yeah, we haven't had that situation too often. Yeah, I've been
Right.
on for a while. And I'm trying to remember, we probably, this is year 23, I think we've had 3 times.
3. That's what I remember.
3 times that a board member did not.
And 2 of them were in the past 2 years. That's kind of
I'm sorry?
2 of them, and that's 2 years.
No. What does that say? Where are you going with that?
I'm just trying to say I put the time, the effort, and the money into it, and I've shown to the board that I have been interested in this for not just this time, but even the prior time. It's something that I want to work with you all. It's plain and simple.
Appreciate that. I know we had some questions that we certainly wanted to make sure to get out there for Mike to respond to. Based on those responses, did that generate any other questions that anyone may have?
Well, did you still have any questions about the referendum and what it was for, or?
What is the money intended to go for?
Board salary.
Don't look at it.
I have a bad sense of humor. The 3 primary areas would be school safety, student safety, staff safety. I'm just going to broad stroke the answer here, if that's okay. And then in addition to that would be staff retention, staff compensation. There's some interrelation between all of this and may lead to another question I have for you. But the third area would be additional
Mental health.
support.
Special.
So those are the 3 main areas that we're asking the public their opinion on that. So.
Right.
Which leads me to a question. Again, we all come to the table with different backgrounds, different experiences. Certainly yours is unique to any of ours, and that's a good thing. Diversity is a good thing. But oftentimes, and I think we all went through it, you don't come with all the knowledge. So there are things that may need to get up to speed on. There would be, not maybe to, but what would be your plan, I guess, on obtaining knowledge or that you feel would be necessary to enhance your board membership?
Well, probably almost immediately I would be picking all of your brains on how the functionality of what I don't know, because I'm not coming in here acting like I know what all goes on in the school board. And I do realize that there's going to be things that I'm going to have to ask for advice from you all, and even doing my own personal research to try to figure out what needs to happen to be able to be a good school board member. So that would happen almost immediately.
There would be local meetings, there would be state meetings.
Yeah.
And
I'm used to those. Right. I have to do those now.
You have capacity for more?
I do. I do. Because I have the luxury, I work from home the majority of the time. I haven't been into the office now for 2 weeks. I've been working from home. So I have the luxury of maneuvering my schedule really any way I need.
Somewhat related to that and somewhat related to your question on, the purpose or kind of the background on the referendum is, how are schools funded and finance of, it sounds like you dealt with the public, at least on the state side, DOC, et cetera. I don't know how much you
I
know the funding.
have to deal with the state now, even with this current job.
Yeah, and just what I find in my walk of life in this chair is, public funding and private funding are very different. And I'm just curious what your background or knowledge base is on how schools are funded and those types of things.
Well, Mr. Hartley actually did give me a rundown when I was running for the last election.
Yeah.
So I did get to see some of what he had on the PowerPoint. That would probably be about the extent of it on exactly how it works. And of course, that was just more of a crash course.
Sure.
We were only there for an hour and a half or so. So there would be a lot more that I'd have to learn when it comes to what's funded, where it comes from. But I do have familiarity with it from Mr. Hartley.
those are my follow-ups. Anything else for Mike?
No.
Anything else for us?
I don't think so.
Okay, wonderful. Again, as I started out, thank you, and regardless of decision, and it's not lost on me that you've done this before, and continue to have an interest to serve on the board. So thank you. It's again a biased opinion of mine. This is an important community process that we have here in the position. So appreciate your interest and thank you for coming in.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you. And I just want to say thank you for your support of the band.
Oh,
My daughter
I love
was,
the band.
I do too. My daughter was in a band all 4 years. She went on and was in the Purdue band after that. So
That's great.
band is near and dear to my heart as
Yeah,
well.
I love doing it, and that's why, ironically, that Mr. Ames thought that I was going to leave for a little while because I had left. We first thought about leaving to go to Lafayette,
Yeah.
and because my job has an office there too,
Okay.
and so there was a band award program that was going to be happening, and he ended up putting me in the Band Booster Hall of Fame and had a certificate and everything given to me for all the time and stuff, which is a real sweet thing to do.
Well
But
deserved though.
he thought that I wasn't going to be there anymore, but little did he know.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank
all.
you. It's better. It really is better.
That's better.
You're supposed to have atomic fireball, those really hot candies.
There's
your seat.
I
Brooke Carlton.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you again.
All right, let's see.
Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. I'll start off just by capturing a little bit about our process here. Pretty straightforward, and then got some questions we'll want to get through and have an opportunity for you to ask some questions of us. But we have an open seat that needs to be filled for the balance of this year and then for next year. And there's certainly a very laid out process by the statute that we go through, and that's what we're doing. And so part of that is requesting, a big part, letters of interest, which obviously you follow through on. And so we have interviews this evening, and then on March 6th, is that Monday?
Monday.
And then our board meeting is moved in May, kind of to fit this schedule, so we'll be meeting on May 15th for a recommendation and determination.
Okay.
So that, in a nutshell, is our process. Before we get into the questions, and regardless of the outcome, thank you for stepping up to come in and speak with us and for your interest in serving on the board. Certainly a big commitment, and appreciate very much for doing that. So I'm going to begin. We've got your letter, very helpful, and but maybe just give you an opportunity to just, we're pretty informal, just talk to us and fill in the blanks, or just tell us about your background, experiences, and really what's led to your interest in serving on the board from schools.
Sure. I'm a 2002 graduate of Plymouth High School. I went to Ball State to pursue architecture and went to do an environmental design degree with a construction management minor. As soon as I graduated, I had a job right out of college. And I've been at that same position, or same location, for the past 13 years, which was a good move to do that instead of architecture. As a lot of my fellow classmates were not as lucky as I was. I have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, both attend Webster, and a 7-month-old who attends Grandma's house.
I would go for it.
Yes, who wouldn't? I know with being a mother of 3, I know how crucial the education system is, and how important it is to educate the next generation. Today's challenges in education are different from when I was in school, when everyone was in school. So we need to figure out how to best access to teach the new generation. And I want to be part of the solution. That's why I would like to be a part of the board.
Thank you.
Brooke, with your experiences as a Plymouth graduate and having kids in our school system, what do you perceive to be the strengths of the Plymouth schools? And then on the flip side of that, what do you perceive that we may need to address and look at to improve or whatever?
I know it's a lot different from my own school, but I have followed it, and I believe the School of Inquiry and vocational education that we're supplying our kids with, for those who are going to college and who are not pursuing college, I think that's the most beneficial program that we have. I wish it would have been here when I was in school. I would have still gone on, but it would have been a little bit more prepared. The flip side of that, I think our big thing, at least for me, is retaining the teachers. I think we could be able to retain more teachers by creating a supportive environment, maybe start a mentoring program between the more experienced teachers and the less experienced, or the newer teachers, and maybe offer some sort of incentives to keep them here or something. That's currently a big thing in a lot of these schools.
Right. You're familiar with the project that we're running, the referendum.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Part of that is to retain.
Yes. I've got a sign in my yard.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Maybe, what are some of the hopes that you have for both schools moving into the future?
Boy, I hope that we can keep teaching them real life situations. The family and consumer sciences, I know a lot has changed from when I was in school. And then from when Mom was in school, they were doing real life cooking and sewing. I don't know how much of that actually takes place anymore. More tradesmen. While people are going to school or college, a lot of them aren't, and we need those carpenters and everything else. So it would be my hope to give them that kind of knowledge.
Thank you. So what do you view as attributes of a good school board member? And then what would your attributes be that you would bring as a board member to this board?
A good boardsman, in my opinion, who have good attendance, a good listener, has a clear vision of where things need to go and how to get there, a team player, someone who can focus on what is best for the student, and advocates for public education. What I can bring, me.
I
have every capability to be here at every meeting and any extra meetings that would be needed. I can communicate well with others. I am a construction manager or project manager, so I have to talk to the owner, the architect, and then I talk to my tradesmen. I'm in charge anywhere between one person to 50 people on a job. We run multi-million-dollar jobs, so I'm good at that.
Sometimes, being in the public eye or public body, folks will come to you outside of a public forum, maybe some school event or a grocery store, or even work sometimes. Or call you at home, or just however it may happen. If you were to receive those types of calls from a parent or a patron, how would you handle those, and what would be your process for that?
I would explain to the people bringing me their concerns that I too share the concerns. I would tell them respectfully that I'm only hearing their one side, and that it would be good to hear both sides of the story. And I'd be glad to meet with them, with the school's HR personnel, and ensure the best interest of all is taken care of.
Thank you. Brooke, we've been asking you some questions. What questions do you have for us?
That's pretty much it. Then I couldn't remember the meeting. And I said it was May
I'm sorry?
I couldn't remember the meeting date. That was May 15th.
Oh,
That was
okay.
pretty much the only question I had.
I think it's even a little later that evening.
7:30.
7:30.
I know that we had questions that we wanted to make sure to ask of Brooke. Based on responses that she has provided, did that generate any follow-up questions for anybody that?
She graduated from a good college, Ball State.
And there's something like that. I have a couple. In terms of the, and obviously you have a unique background to the rest of us, which is a good thing. Diversity certainly is, helps create something strong. But none of us know everything. So in terms of information, or how would you approach, gathering information or things that you think would be necessary to be the best board member you could be?
Maybe create some sort of survey. Obviously, we don't know what we're doing well or not failing at, but not doing so good at, unless we get something out there to either the teachers or the students or even the parents. The parents are a vast majority, and they're so widely arranged that if we don't tap into that, we're never going to know where we are and where we need to be. So I said, social media if we needed to, or just go door to door and figure out that way.
In terms of knowledge that you may not possess about school funding comes to mind for me. It's kind of a different animal. Curriculum, even just a vocabulary that tends to exist in the school environment. How would you educate yourself?
The internet's a wonderful thing, and if I can't find it there, I know that there are many of you that could help. Many educators that I'm familiar with help as well.
Those were my follow-ups. Anybody else have any? Well, thank you. As I mentioned, you've got the time frame that we're going to be making the decision. And again, I can't emphasize enough, thank you for taking your personal time and interest in this important role. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
Yes. Thank you very much. You're very smart.
Thank you.
Hi. That's best.
This is Stacy Jackson. Hi, Stacy. This is where you
Oh, front and center, okay. Very good, thank you.
We have a wire.
Good. I was hoping you to record this session, because it might be a doozy, so. Need glasses, I hope everybody else does too, somehow or another, but. Very good.
Welcome.
Great, thank you.
I'm Todd, and I'll start out. We're pretty informal.
Okay.
So yeah, we're got some questions we want to go through, but I just wanted to set the stage a little bit in terms of the process that we're going through. Pretty much laid out by statute, but as you're aware, we had a board member that needed to step away, moved. So we have to fill that seat. It'll be the rest of this year, and then for next year, and then we'll go through the election process. So the statute lays out that process for us to go through, and we are following that and requested letters, and obviously we got one of you. Appreciate it very much. So we will. We've got interviews this evening. We have interviews on Monday, the 6th, and then our meeting this month, because of that process and statutory time frame, et cetera, we're We moved our meeting to the 15th this month, so it'll be on Wednesday the 15th at 7:30. When we will make a recommendation or determination from the candidate. So that'll be the process. And before starting with some questions here this evening, regardless of the outcome, thank you
Oh, sure.
for
Absolutely.
submitting your name and giving up your personal time to come in. And again, we all think this is a pretty important thing that we're doing here, and for our schools, for our community, and again, regardless of the outcome, thank you in advance for your interest and participation. So, received your letter, very helpful, and we'll just give you an opportunity to jump off the paper here and
Sure.
talk about your background, experiences, and what in the world led you to be interested in serving on the school board here at Plymouth.
Sure. One of the things I noted is that I'm a native Hoosier, so I was actually born and raised in Hartford City. If anybody knows Blackford County, so smallest county in the state. So came from a community that I feel like is like Plymouth. My family was very active in the community, and even at the school board level. So a little bit of it in the blood, if you will, from that perspective. My career took me after being a pre-med student at Ball State, and then kind of in a fluke way getting my position at IU School of Medicine in Indianapolis. Kind of small town girl goes to a big city, but very much enjoyed that, kind of getting away maybe from that kind of situation. But it was coming for job purposes. IU School of Medicine, as many of you know, has a satellite campus in South Bend, and it's actually on Notre Dame's campus. And so it was an opportunity for me to come this direction and to create a campus that was only a 2-year curricular campus. Those medical students stayed for 2 years and then went to Indianapolis for years 3 and 4. And this was an opportunity for me to create the curriculum and to go from a 2-year to a 4-year campus. So we were the first campus in the state to do that under my direction. So I do have a background in curriculum development, and therefore it led to significant faculty development work as well. I certainly have had quite an experience in various pedagogies as well, teaching pedagogies. I serve as one of the experts at the School of Medicine in team-based learning as well. So I have even though all of this is in higher education or medical education, so much of it is foundational in K through 12 and applicable there as well. So coming to a small town, it became obvious to me that if I would have had the opportunity to raise my kids in Fishers, which is where I was living at the time, I was working downtown Indianapolis, or raising them here in Plymouth, it was not a hard decision to make to stay here and to look at ways to then become involved in this community. And that wasn't a hard thing to do at all, from my involvement with Tri Kappa and then just immediately getting involved. Once Emma hit kindergarten, she's my oldest, who's now a 6th grader at Riverside. So it wasn't hard to just jump right into PTO and start getting involved with the school at that level and seeing the dire need that the elementary schools especially need help from their parents. The parental involvement at elementary schools is critical, in my opinion. So that kind of stepped me off there kind of at that point to just show that I think any way that I could be helpful, from being a room parent to organizing fundraising activities at Webster through PTO, that was what I needed to do. So to me, this is kind of coming full circle now, that if I can help across the school corporation, that's what this position is about.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Stacy, with your experiences in Plymouth schools with your children and PTO and so forth, what do you perceive to be the assets or strengths of Plymouth schools? And on the flip side, do you perceive any areas that we need to address or look at to improve?
I think that the individualized attention that, I'm going to speak more to Webster, just because I've seen with both of my girls now going through there, and them being totally different students. We have Emma, firstborn, all the adjectives that go along with firstborn, sails through Webster and now Riverside with such ease. And then I have number 2, who I love and is a wonderful little girl all to her own, but is just not the same student academically as Emma. And so we have seen the teachers from Carrie McGuire, the principal, all the way down to the individual grade level teacher, be able to identify those differences in her. And we've had lots of discussions. We've had lots of times where mama's had to come in there. So I think that has been so important and that I've seen a direct benefit of that. I think challenges, and I can't say that Plymouth has got to be any different, but class size is always going to be something that wherever we can recruit and retain and keep on more teachers, as what's going on right now with the climate here, in Plymouth with the referendum, if there's any way that we can reduce class size, I'd love to see that for sure. I think Lily's a great example of a student who could benefit more from that. Yeah.
And then Stacy, what are some of the hopes that you have for Plymouth schools moving into the future?
Yeah. I know that at the time when, and forgive me, I'm forgetting kind of the committee I sat on, but we were in focus groups. And it was parents, it was administrators, and we went around and toured each of the buildings. And I remember coming to the board that day as being a member of one of those focus groups to present some of those priority areas. And one of the priority areas was Lincoln is on its last leg. And as a school corporation, what are we going to do about that? And so I'm always hoping that our facilities are staying in line with technology and with the needs of the students going forth as we're taking them all the way out through K through 12, because I'm the recipient of that. So after they leave here and they've decided to pursue higher education and beyond that, I'm the recipient of what was that foundation like for them. So facilities for sure is going to help promote the type of pedagogy that we use in the classroom and those skill sets that are going to be available to students. Mm-hmm.
What do you view as good attributes of a good school board member, and what strengths would you bring to this board?
I think sometimes we have to be listeners than we are talkers, for sure. The pulse of this community is strong. They are willing to vocalize themselves, maybe more readily at other times than not, and the school board can take the brunt of that. So we have to make sure that we're understanding what the pulse of the issue is, or what's the angst around the issue? Why are people inflamed about something, or why is this issue so easy? Maybe at the same point too. So to make sure that I'm a voice of hopefully bringing consensus to the team, but at the same point, am I also being a member of this community to bring issues that are current, for sure.
You touched on it there for a second. Sometimes not everybody's happy, and sometimes they won't come to a public setting to express that. So we may at times get calls at home, at the grocery store, at the ball game, wherever. And if you were in that situation, what would be your thought process in terms of handling a parent or a patron that comes to you individually?
Sure. I experience that now. In some ways, for my medical students, I'm essentially on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I can be called at any hour of the day. Sometimes there are things that are just serious things that's happened to a student and they need to report it back to the school as soon as possible. So I don't really have an 8 to 5 job in that regard kind of thing, so I can appreciate that. I think the school board member, this is a public position, and so the public should have the ability to be able to have their ear, and sometimes that's not always convenient hours and things like that. But I think it's also my role to say, thank you for bringing this issue. I'm glad that you reached out. I'm glad that you took the opportunity to do that. And that now I can bring it back to the board as a future agenda item. Maybe it can't get on there right away because we have a slate of things that's already on the docket, but that there could be a time and place for that. But that's what they're supposed to do. That's what our role here is to do.
Stacy, we've asked you several questions. What questions do you have for us?
Yeah, I think one of the questions.
She has a list.
Yeah, I brought in just a couple, but I think it kind of relates back to some of the things we talked about. It's why this isn't necessarily always the prize-winning job, in the community to have, or you kind of sometimes may feel like you have a target on you. So, why would you ever have selected to be on the school board? What was important to you about doing that?
Well, for me, and it might be different for each of us, but for me as a parent of kids who at the time were still in school, I wanted to make sure that our school system was preparing our kids for whatever they chose to do, whether it was go on to college or making sure that they had every opportunity to go into a career and become a well-rounded, lifelong learner, someone who was going to be curious as they continued throughout their life. So I felt like being on the school board, we play an important role in making sure the direction is going in a positive way and making our community the best it can be. That was me.
Yeah, and basically I wanted to be on because I feel like, one, I got a great education here, had a lot of opportunities, and then, my kids, and I have a child with special needs, and then a bright child, whatever. So I could see all the opportunities that I was so glad that they both had, and I just wanted to be a part of continuing that legacy for the corporation.
Well, I retired as principal of high school, and I was so gratified to see the kids mature and grow and move on. And after I retired, I wanted to continue to make sure that we still had a good school system, good teachers, good administrators, great place to live, great place to work, great place to raise a family. And that was my motive.
And a legacy to uphold. You are.
Especially since 3 of them are my former students.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Keep it under wraps.
2 more sitting back there.
Very good. Very good.
I do it for a high level of pay.
I assume that's why we're all here for. Sure. Very good. Very good.
I'll be serious. This is my 23rd year of being on here, and your question made me go back in time. Why did I get involved, and why would I stay involved? It was certainly not because I like going through elections and those types of things. That is not the fun part of it all. It should be apolitical, and that's my opinion. But I think as individuals, we all have different things that motivate us. And one thing that motivates me is I prefer to I want to give back more than I take in our community, and I've been given a lot from this community, and I want to give back a lot to this community. And people can do that in different ways, and I'm not saying this is better or worse than other ways to do it, but this was the choice I made to get involved with the school system. And we all, and this may be a question that we come back to, but we all bring different experiences to the board. I felt I had something I could offer to the board, to the school system. I deal with finance and those types of things, and so I think that brings a perspective that is helpful to the board. I hope. And beyond that, I mean, I'm born and raised and lots of roots. I'm familiar with Blackford County. It's not that much different. So it's just something that has been very important to me. My kids went through, and I didn't do it. And actually, that's almost why I didn't do it, because of the target on our back. It can be almost a bigger target on our kids' backs. So you weigh all those things, but at the end of the day, I feel strongly about the community, and the school system is extremely important, and it's the interconnectivity that the school has with, and the importance that the school has with economic development, with just the quality of life. That's important for a lot of different reasons, and people define that in different ways. So, a lot of different reasons, but those are the reasons that I've stayed on, or tried to stay on.
I just have one other thing. I imagine that being a member is making sure that we know what are the challenges, either that parents are experiencing, maybe even students too, and certainly the faculty as well. So what are those how do you, maybe not so much how do they bring them to you, but how do you know as a board that you're keeping your pulse on those things? Is it because Mr. Hartley and others are bringing them here and whatnot, they're making present, but how do you know that you're on the cusp of making sure you understand what the challenges are in the school corporation from any level?
Well, I attend a lot of school activities, so consequently I see the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I get around to quite a few coffee shops, so I hear the good, bad, and the indifferent.
It's where the real business occurs,
That's right. Exactly. Everything is resolved there. No, I think open communications is extremely important, and we have a good administrative staff, and they communicate things to us, and I get phone calls periodically, and that's fine. My doors are always open, but decision-making comes through the body, through the administrative, and there's proper channels and so forth. So, but yeah, we're open to anything and everything.
I think, I don't know very much about running a school corporation. That sounds odd, being on the school board, but what I mean by that is I'm no expert in curriculum. I'm no expert in a lot of things but what I think is critical for us is to hire the people that have that knowledge and get good people in the position. I think we've been blessed that way. And communication between the administration and the faculty is critical. And because we're not in there every day. I'm not going to go walk in the halls of the schools to, this is how we should do it, or this is how we should not do it. That's not my role. I think my role, again, part of this team is to set the vision of where the school corporation is going and the policies that are going to guide. But I am not the expert. And we've been fortunate in terms of having strong staff, having strong administration. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions though, in terms of are we getting the information that we feel we need to get, or the leadership that we feel is necessary, because we all have other jobs. I mean, in terms of what we do on during the, so that doesn't mean we're not continuously focusing on this, but I'm not here every day, and I can't be here every day. But that's how I look at it in terms of how do I ensure that we're keeping up. I mean, we're pretty active in the organizations for School Board Association and superintendents. I mean, all of those keep us abreast with information of current trends. Sometimes have to be careful what's the new toy. And that's why we have people here that to evaluate and really bring recommendations to us. And so that's a framework I operate from.
Those are all the questions I had, really.
Oh, again, these are questions we wanted to make sure and get through with Stacy. Is based on responses, are there follow-ups, or that anyone has for,
Okay.
I have.
Oh, okay. All right.
You touched on it in terms of, I can't remember under what context, but in terms of the referendum, and we've got some other current, we've got junior high under construction and those types of things. Any questions in regard to what is behind those decisions or where we're trying to go? It kind of ties into what question earlier about where the corporation is going, but any reaction, I guess, to those types of initiatives from your chair?
Well, when Brooke Bussey came to my door, I said, we can go ahead and sign us up. I don't know how we're not signed up yet, and go ahead and put the
and I'm not asking who's supporting and who's not.
No.
It's just a function of.
It was just an issue of already, being supportive of the issues at hand, because of the fact that I do feel very strongly about recruiting and retaining teachers in this community being one of the issues. I remember being on that focus group when we went around to each of the facilities, and Dave Shope was taking us around, and it was just amazing at telling us the ins and outs of every single pipe known to man in any building. He is a wealth of knowledge. But I think more importantly, it was at that time when the security measures had not been put in place at the front entrances at many of the schools. So now that construction's been done, so when you walk into Webster, they've got that now glassed off right there, and there's one entrance into the front. And we were just analyzing that for each building and knowing okay, this is one fix in that next budget cycle that was going to come up that could be had, but there's so many others that have to be done. And I know that's, part of this. Another piece of that I feel so strongly about, because I deal with it every day almost, and it's almost no exaggeration. The mental health crisis that's occurring right now in our young people is amazing. So it's been to the point where I've staged interventions with our medical students. I've actually physically had to take them to the psychiatric intake unit as well. It is everywhere in our society, but if we can get to young people, albeit with social workers understanding the pulse of what's going on with these children at a young age, then helping them get treatment and get the resources they need, maybe that will lessen at my level. I don't know, but it's very clearly a problem. So seeing where that funding could potentially go to help our school systems is absolutely critical.
And you asked, why we're, how do we stay current in those types of things? I guess I'll kind of turn that back for you in terms of, we all come from different backgrounds. We obviously have some expertise in areas, and so we all bring those to the table. But there's areas that are blind spots, perhaps, or things that we're just not familiar with. So, what do you do, or how would you? What would be your thought process of gathering information to get up to speed, or on things that?
I think I don't think it's a bad idea that, as far as once if I would be on this board, that to be able to tell the groups that I interact with. I'm very active in Tri Kappa. I sit on several of the committees and even chair some of them. And it's an okay thing to stand up in front of that group of women who have numerous children in all levels of our school system, to be able to say, I'm now, a member here. If there's anything I can help with, I would like to be able to do that. If they see anything, I think it's no different than we said, when I attend some of these events, people know that already. So they know that they could grab you at the basketball game and say something, but they have to know it. I mean, I'm sure it would get printed in the paper or be on the school website or whatever, that I would be in this position, but to be able to use that voice a little bit more interactively with the groups that I'm in, or, opportunities with church groups that we interact with and things like that. So I think to be able to say, sort of, here I am, what can I do to understand this if you bring that, kind of issue to me with the groups that I already currently interact with as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those are my thoughts. Anything else? No. As I mentioned, starting out, interviews tonight, Monday, back on the 15th with a recommendation. And again, coming back, regardless of the decision, thank you. It's easy to stay at home and say, I wonder what will happen.
Yeah.
It's harder to step up and say, I want to help make something happen. So thank you for your interest.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
This is Tracy Schaefer.
Hi.
Hi, Tracy. How are you?
Nice to meet you. What's that question?
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Robin, cut there.
Nice to meet
Well, thank you.
you.
This will be your seat.
So helpful. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to, we're pretty informal around here. It'll be pretty casual.
Okay.
Until we decide to turn the screws.
Okay.
No, that's not gonna happen. So I'm gonna start with just outlining a little bit of the framework you probably already know, just in terms of, our process here. And then we've got some questions we want to make sure to get through, opportunity for you to turn the table on us. So we'll get to know each other a little bit better. So, we have an open seat, so statute lays out, I'm telling you about statutes. The statute lays out a process, for us to go through, to fill that seat for the balance of the year and then next year. And then, it will just be the election process from there. So we are going through that, and, we have letters of interest, appreciate yours, conducting interviews tonight, Monday. And then we'll come back at our board meeting. We move to meet the statutory requirements to the 15th. So we'll meet at that time, 7:30 to bring our recommendation and decision.
Okay.
So pretty straightforward. So before we get going, and regardless of the outcome, thank you for your interest. It's easy to sit back and watch. It's hard to step up and get involved, and appreciate you doing that. Again, regardless of the outcomes, we feel pretty important to the school corporation and to the community, and seems like you have that outlook as well. So thank you for coming in this evening.
You're welcome.
We have your letter. We're going to let you jump off the page and just tell us about your background, experiences, or what has led you to this crazy decision that you're interested in serving on the school board.
Well, it's funny you call it a crazy decision. It's not something that I had really ever considered, but now I have kids. I have a second grader, and I have a son who will be going into kindergarten. And, my husband and I partially decided to live in Plymouth because we wanted our kids to go to a public school. I work in South Bend, and the public schools there, they have difficulties, and I didn't necessarily want my kids to go to that public school, but I did want my kids to go to a public school. I think it's important for them to be well-rounded, to be exposed to people of different backgrounds, different educations, and it also is somewhat convenient that my mother-in-law lives in Marshall County. So we bought a home here when my son started kindergarten, and we've been here since, and Plymouth Community Schools was a large part of that decision. And while we've only lived here for 3 years, we're very happy with the school. We're very happy with the community. And I think the school board would be a good way for me to serve that community. It's something that I think it's a good service project for me because, working an 8 to 5, being heavily involved in the PTO isn't really a great option for me. I do go to my kids' school for field trips and things like that, and we're able to contribute when the PTO needs something. But in terms of, really serving and being really there for the schools, it's not something that I'm able to do with my schedule, whereas this sort of position is something that I can do to help and to serve the schools, and it's also looked at in a positive way by my employer, such that I could be flexible where I needed to help with the school.
Very good. Thank you.
Tracy, with your experiences and with your kids being in the school system, what do you perceive to be the strengths that you've observed thus far? And then on the flip side of that, have you observed any areas of concern that we need to be looking at or addressing?
I think the strengths in large part are the teachers. I think the teachers that I've had experience with are great. And anytime, I actually have had one concern while I was here, and frankly it was panic. That really didn't have anything to do with Plymouth schools. It had to do with something that's going on with schools on a larger scale. And my sons go to Washington Discovery Academy, which is an open concept school. And I think there was an elementary shooting. And I just got very upset and very panicked. And so I talked to Mrs. Cooper about my concerns, and she, alleviated them. And, I'm a very reasonable person. And so we just kind of discussed some I guess, ideas about child safety. And, the school does do a lot. When I first started with Washington Discovery Academy, the door wasn't locked all the time. It is locked all the time. Nobody goes in that school now without going through and seeing Mrs. Bagby before you enter. So I'd say that was school safety is probably one of my bigger concerns, but it's not, I don't think there's a problem with it at Plymouth. I think it's just something that all schools have to be aware of now, unfortunately. But I don't perceive it as an issue. It's just, I think, for all schools presently.
And that's part of the referendum that we're running
Yes.
to improve school safety. So I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And what are some of the hopes that you have for Plymouth schools moving into the future?
Well, I hope that Plymouth schools can adjust to some of the, and again, this is something that's true for all schools, it's not unique to Plymouth. There's a lot of changes in terms of technology, and I think Plymouth schools have done a really, really good job of keeping up with that. My children have laptops. My oldest son has a laptop, my youngest son will have an iPad, and that's actually kind of unheard of. Whenever I tell anybody that, they're always surprised. And so for that to be true in a public school, I think Plymouth has done a really good job of making sure that technology is funded. And I think while technology is also going to have its drawbacks for schools, that really has more to do with social media and being outside of school for the students. I think in terms of administratively, I think the school is doing a really good job of trying to keep up with this technology, and I think it's important that the school stays on track with that and tries to make sure going forward that our kids are learning to use that, because I think in the future, that's how everything's going to work. And so I think kind of following along with that and developing portions of the, now I realize this isn't necessarily a school board function, but developing the curriculum and all that to go along with it, I think is important going forward.
What attributes do you feel are a good school board member should possess, and then what strengths do you feel like you would bring to the board?
I think school board members really need to be good at diffusing tension. I think sometimes people come to principals or school board members and they're upset or panicked, and I think it's important that those people be heard, but that it be done in a way that they're not being promised something. And I think that actually the school board has an attorney, doesn't need an attorney. I don't view that as my role. But being an attorney, I work with people who are in situations that are not happy. They work for an employer and they left, and now they're being accused of being in breach of a non-compete agreement, and so they're upset. And so I'm used to kind of talking people through, making them feel heard, but also giving them, these are kind of the options, these are the realistic things that we're looking at, so you're giving them a solution. So I think that would be a strength for me, is that I'm used to hearing problems. I deal with problems on a daily basis. It's not really anything that's new to me.
if that, we don't have any problems, but if that you touched on it, but this is obviously a public position, individually and collectively, but not always does an individual parent, patron, bring their concerns to the public. They'll catch you as they can, and home, work, grocery store, what have you. So what would be your outlook in terms of how to deal with those types of phone calls or inquiries as a board member?
Well, I think it's important to be cognizant of the fact that if I were a board member, that doesn't mean I'm speaking for the board. I need to be careful to choose my words so that I'm not speaking for the board. I actually would be to some extent looking for some directives from the current board members in terms of how they deal with situations like that, because I think it's important to acknowledge people and not dismiss them, but at the same time, you don't want them to think that you are a forum to whom they can bring their complaints and that you can get something done for them, because I don't think that that's the case. I think everything needs to be done in a collective board setting so that it's done properly, number one. But number two, I don't think this is supposed to be a political position where, everybody feels they can bring their grievances to you and that you can get something done. While I understand that there's a policy-making aspect to the board, I don't think that it would be my job to make any sort of policies. So I wouldn't want to promise anything like that to any person, any concerned community member who is speaking to me. So I actually would be looking somewhat to the board for if there's an input or a protocol on how all of you speak to concerned citizens without promising something that you obviously can't do.
Tracy, what questions do you have for us?
Well, that would be one of my questions is there a directive or a manner, how do you handle it when somebody comes to you with an issue without telling them, yes, I will, I'm bringing this up and we're going to address this and we're going to fix this. How do you tactfully address those issues when somebody does approach you in such a setting?
Well, basically, we're good listeners. And we direct through the proper channels. That's the most important thing. For example, if somebody has a problem at a school or something, we make sure that they go through the teacher and through the administrator. And if they don't have any success there, then they go to the superintendent's office. And if that doesn't work, then we're available. But basically, pretty much things are pretty much resolved before it even gets to the school board. But there is definitely proper channels they have to go through.
I would echo that. I think over the years, you get those inquiries and you want to be respectful. And there's a reason that the issue has come up. You may be getting that reason or you may not be from an individual's perspective, but there's something that needs to be addressed. And to your point, I'm not going to act on behalf of the board. I'm going to listen. I'm going to suggest based on what I hear. Here's the protocol that I think is appropriate here, and we're going to follow that. And I remind people that it's probably in their best interest that I not be the first line of defense, because depending on, or advocate or whatever you want to call it, I'm not going to be either one of those, but you're really the last stop. In a lot of instances, if in fact it gets that far, not very often does that happen, but especially, if it's anything personnel related, I'm going to stop that pretty quickly, because of all the reasons that you know and can appreciate. But again, it's protocol. There are channels that are appropriate. Would be my advice.
Do you have any other questions?
In terms of, so the procedure is a little bit different in the situation with it being a vacancy in the seat versus an election. And I know on the 15th you'll announce the board members and then you'll provide information. the first meeting, I guess I would prefer to read those documents before I fully participated.
I recused myself from voting the first
Okay.
night, because I was in the same position, and I, I don't want to vote on something I have not done anything.
Okay, yeah, I guess I feel I won't be educated enough
Right.
to participate, and
That
so.
doesn't stop us.
I did exactly.
No,
that's what I
that
did.
first meeting, you'll be a good listener,
Yeah.
Okay.
so don't worry about that.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
I don't believe so.
Again, we wanted to make sure to ask these questions, based on Tracy's responses. Did that generate any follow-up questions that people have? That they have? I have a couple. In terms of, and we touched on it before, we all bring different experiences, personally, professionally, or whatever, to the board, and that makes us diverse, and that's a good thing. And obviously, none of us are attorneys. I mean, that's an example. You bring some legal background, but none of us know everything. So, what would be your outlook in terms of getting up to speed on things that, school funding? I don't know what your knowledge base is. Just to pick that topic, it's hard to get your arms around, and it's different than anything in the private sector. So, as an example, or maybe curriculum, or whatever the situation may be, what would be your outlook on educating yourself or getting up to speed on those types of things?
Well, school finance is very difficult. I'm not well versed in school finance. My experience with schools is more in the arena of looking at school liability and immunity and things like that. So in terms of school finance, it's not something I'm familiar with. But I have gone through, I have looked at finance and budgets that have been approved by the school board in the past. And so I'm aware of.
Do you work with schools?
I do not typically work with schools.
Okay.
No.
I don't know what your area of your law is.
Well, primarily I do personal injuries, but I do a lot of things with contracts.
Okay.
But I have done, my first 2 years of practice, I did insurance defense work.
Okay.
And then.
I'm not being nosy, I'm just curious.
Yes, I get involved with the county and St. Joseph County quite a bit, which has a little bit of overlap in terms of revenues and things like that. But in terms of school finance, I will be the first to admit I would have a learning curve. And it's something that I would have to look at the information that's presented. I mean, I think I'm capable of understanding it, but I would be looking to the people who are presenting the budget to provide me with information to make my assertions. And then I also know that Mr. Taylorson, you're well versed in finance, so you'd also be something I'd probably be looking to provide me. But I have a learning curve on that. Being an attorney has not provided me a lot of help in terms of understanding public school finance.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pick on finance. It could be anything. I mean, I guess part of that too is there are, as I'm sure you're aware, different associations that we are members of, and lots of resources out there that are available to us. So, yeah, I didn't mean to quiz you on school finance. It could have been any subject, landscaping. Just generally, how do you approach kind of the continuing education?
Well, I'm actually required to attend continuing education.
Yeah.
So, going to continuing education, if I felt I could actually do that, but I have to do it anyway, that there was an area I felt that I was lacking. But I am good at research. It's something I can do. I can read codes, I can read statutes. So, I feel like, again, there would be a learning curve in terms of actually, I think for anybody, for sitting in on a board and figuring out how it functions and what you need to know, I think everybody's going to have a learning curve. But I think I am up to the task in terms of understanding.
Very good, thank you. I'm good. Any other questions for Tracy? I'm going to reiterate, because to thank you for coming in. You're obviously busy, and to put your hat in the ring and be interested in serving our community through this process. So regardless of the outcome, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. That completes our agenda for this evening. If there's any other questions, entertain a motion to.
So moved.
Second.
All good?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.